Welcome back to another episode of the Across the River podcast. This is our probably best episode yet, as we have an amazing guest, future broadcasting Hall of Famer with us today, Ian Eagle. Hi, Ian. How are you?
Oh, you just put a lot of pressure on me now. All of a sudden, I have to deliver for the best episode ever. I'm thrilled to be on with you guys. I did not anticipate that there would be any angst connected to this appearance, but now I got to bring my A game. I was thinking C minus. Now I'm bringing A game for you.
What made you
Can't be
think
like
C
the Bengals
minus?
this weekend.
See, but yeah, a coast. I would just coast a little bit. No, I'm not
Yeah.
a coaster. I don't cut corners. I don't look for shortcuts. I do everything in my future and in my current state full throttle. So you're getting every pice of what I'm capable of for your podcast. I wouldn't have it any other way.
So
Thank
you
you.
won't look like the Bengals, is what I'm hearing.
A little flat. They came out a little bit flat. They're now 1-11 in the first 2 weeks of the season under Zach Taylor. And
Gosh.
obviously that starts growing that narrative and
Mhm.
you want to push it to the side if you're Taylor and the Bengals. But until you start winning these early season games, there's no getting around it. It was odd. There was a strange vibe around the team in the first quarter, and then it carried over. Even when they had a big play to Gesicki, the ball moves, touchdown taken off the board. Literally the next play, fumble, which
Mhm.
should have been a touchdown, return the other way. New England scores points off that turnover. And hey, Gerard Mayo, NFL head coaching debut. I didn't even say on the air, which is shocking, hold the Mayo. I could have said it 6 or 7 times. I fought against it, and Mayo gets his first head coaching win.
You gotta do it when they play the Titans, because Will Levis likes mayonnaise. That'll be the
Oh
perfect
yeah.
mix.
I actually have Tennessee this week. I have Jets and
That's
Titans this
Tennessee.
week. So maybe I'll use hold the Mayo this week and just
Hold
keep
them
it
here.
our little
Is that
secret if it
is that
comes up.
something you actively have to keep in your mind, like those little quips that you have? Because I know when I'm doing games, I have stuff like that, and I have to hold it for the right moment, or just see if it's like even applicable to any spot, like a hold the mayo type thing. Do you have that in your game in your mind pregame?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, this is one of those secret sauce theories to play by play. If you come in with 27 things that you've already thought about and it's contrived and you're trying to jam it into a spot, odds are it's not going to hit. It's not going to feel authentic. So, in my approach, it's always been a blend of reacting in the moment and being very genuine and having it feel organic because it is organic, and then being prepared, going in with a game plan. And if there is something that connects in some way, are you ready to jump on it and make it work? The best example of that in recent years for me, Memphis was in a playoff game against Minnesota NBA on TNT. And Ja Morant at the end of the third quarter has this ridiculous dunk to cap off a 12-0 run. He gets a running start, and it's one of the more impressive playoff dunks I've ever seen. And it just capped off this perfect stretch of time for the Grizzlies with the home fans going nuts. And Morant is such an acrobatic player that it lifts you out of your seat. And for years, I toyed with his name. His name's interesting. His name's Ja. You just
Mhm.
haven't heard that
Yeah.
in other sports. So when I was growing up, there was a candy that you would put in your mouth. It was a hard candy, and you would try to bite it. And if you bit it before it was ready to actually be separated, you could crack your teeth. And the candy was called a jawbreaker. And for whatever reason, I thought about it when Ja Morant broke into the NBA, but I never used it. I just filed it away, and I had used other versions. I'm not sure you know the musical act Ja Rule,
Mhm.
a famous hip hop artist. I use that at times, and I use some other variations. But in that moment, it hits me literally as he's going down to dunk it. You could check it out on YouTube. You can hear the buildup in my voice as it's happening. And that was based on something that I had thought about, but never thought for a moment I was going to use it that day. It just fit. And usually those are the best calls when it just feels right in the moment.
Yeah.
That's great. You said you're talking about stuff from your childhood. I do have a question to ask. What was the go-to pizza place in Forest Hills? I have some options. A&J's, Thiracy, or Pepe's. I heard some different answers, but I
Yeah.
need it from the man himself.
Good research. Really good research, Gans.
Thank you.
A&J's was the best of the bunch. It was the most consistent. It was the one that I went to most often, but it wasn't that way initially. Pepe's was really just my place. Nobody else liked it. I was the only one that sang its praises, and it was on the way home from junior high school. So for 3 years of junior high school, I would stop and get a slice of pizza right after school. Never told my parents. And then I would get to dinner and not finish my dinner. And they would always say, like, what's going on? I was like, no, I'm stuffed. I literally held this secret for 3 years and have never shared that I would get a slice every day after school. And my parents thought that I wasn't eating well. They thought there were some issues. There might have been some issues, by the way, but the issues had nothing to do with the fact that I didn't like the dinner. I just had a slice of pizza after school for 3 straight years. There was another pizza place, Sorisi, which was on 71st Avenue. And I used to have a little back and forth with the guy that worked there. We would kind of rank on one another. And then one of the days I must have taken it too far with him, and he jumped through the window to chase me down the street and tackle me. And I thought he was joking. He was half joking. So I didn't frequent Sorisi that often after that encounter.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah,
Is there a
very
reason
reasonable.
why? Is there a reason why you kept it a secret, or you just wanted to keep it a quiet spot, or?
The fact that I was having a slice every day after school, even though my father told me do
Yeah.
not have a slice after school every day.
Okay,
I
that sounds
just,
like the answer right there.
yeah, that was pretty much it. It was based on the fact
Okay.
I was told not to do something and I did it anyway as a
Mhm.
rebellious young man for 3 consecutive years.
Must have had a good slice.
Oh, really good slice, like perfect crisp. This is pre-Portnoy. We're talking about 1981, 82, 83. Different era in New York, Forest Hills, Queens, mean streets. Not really.
It gets dangerous sometimes over there.
Clearly, I pushed the wrong button for the guy at Cerisi and he mauled me.
Exactly. Jacob?
Uh,
Come on, Jacob.
I,
Come on,
I'm
my
ready
man.
and willing to answer anything.
I just want to touch on we were talking about your childhood, so I want to touch on your first pro game. How did it feel knowing that you were calling Peyton Manning's first game?
Yeah, pretty wild when you think about it now. At the time, he was the number one pick. That was my first game for CBS. And I obviously wanted to do a good job. CBS took a chance on me. I was young. I was 29 years old. I had done the Jets on radio for 1 year. I had done 3 games on TV of NFL Europe. And my 3 games were in Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam. So they would fly us to London. They would put us up in a flat, and then we would go and commute to our games. And this is an interesting sidebar. It was Lufthansa Airlines in 1997. This is the last time that I remember being on an airplane that had a smoking section. I was in row 18 and the smoking section started in row 19. So think about for a moment, we're flying to Germany and there's a dude firing up a heater behind me and blowing it directly into the back of my head. This is what I was dealing with on the phone. I'm like, I'm in the non-smoking section. What's going on here? So these are the memories that come flooding back. I get the job the next year for CBS 1998. First game is Indianapolis, Miami. So it's Peyton Manning's professional debut, and it's Dan Marino towards the end of his NFL career, a Hall of Fame career, one of the great pure passers in NFL history. So part of the job is you get to meet with the head coach for both teams. You get to meet with the coordinators if you want, and you meet with the players. So the first person I meet with as an NFL television broadcaster in my career is Peyton Manning. He walks in the door. He's a deceptively big dude. That's the other part. At that time, he wasn't necessarily as beefy. He was a bit thinner, but he's tall. He's a legitimate 6'5". So he walks in the door. He knows my name right out of the gate. He's like, "Hey, Ian, how you doing? Peyton Manning." I'm like, damn, he's prepared. I haven't done a game yet, and he's on top of it. And he then puts on a clinic in our conversation, about 15, 20 minutes. And you could tell his intellect is off the charts. His knowledge base is very strong. And we're all impressed. So now we work the game, ends up throwing a couple of picks. We got a reaction shot of his dad, Archie Manning, in the crowd. Miami wins the game in Peyton Manning's debut. But if you go back and watch, and this is something that you can see on YouTube right now, our entire tease for the broadcast, the first time on CBS for me doing an NFL game, it's on Peyton Manning. And what if this is a Hall of Fame career, which it obviously turned out to be, one of the great quarterbacks in NFL history. You don't know that in 1998, but when you're coming up with a tease to promote what you're doing that day, that's what we chose. And it turned out to be prophetic in many ways because of the legendary career that he had. I ended up probably doing, I don't know, 40 Peyton Manning games over the course of my career between Indianapolis and Denver. Really impressive guy, always lived up to the billing, always enjoyed speaking with him, not shocked that he's been as successful as he is. He just gets it. He's got a great sense of humor and tremendous football knowledge. He is a PhD when it comes to football.
You have a favorite memory with Peyton himself throughout your career?
Yeah, with Peyton, because you do all those games, that means you get to do all those meetings, and sitting back and learning from him and him sharing his view of the game. As far as a highlight, I did do a record breaker, Manning in Houston to break the touchdown record. And I just remember the build up, and not to say that I wasn't far along in my career, but I could tell from my bosses how much it meant that I was on that game calling a potential record breaker. And afterwards, the call was very good. It was on time and hit all the details. So look, in this job, that's the constant tightrope that you're doing as a play-by-play announcer. There's no backspace. There's no do-over. There's no mulligan. There's no second take. You get one shot, one opportunity. Eminem knows this. That's it. So the fact that the call went well, the fact that it's part of his career highlight reel, and for me, looking back on it, I think it was one of those moments that my bosses at CBS thought, okay, we can trust Ian on a bigger stage, and he's going to do quality work, and it's going to work for the moment. He'll meet the moment. And that's part of your approach as a play-by-play announcer. You want to meet the moment. You don't want to take away from the moment. If you can enhance the moment, now we're talking about another level of broadcasting. But at the very least, you need to meet the moment as a play-by-play announcer.
So what was the hiring process like at CBS, and how was it different back then when you were going through it and when Noah was going through his hiring process at NBC?
So hiring process back in my day, it was hieroglyphics on the side of caves. I'm much older. No, it wasn't
The
like
dinosaur era.
Yeah, exactly. We made a fire with 2 sticks and talked about it. No, what ended up happening for me is hard to believe looking back on it now, but this is how it happened. 1998, the CBS sports team was in Japan to do the Winter Olympics, February of 98, Nagano, Japan. And because their entire crew was over there, they still had 3 college basketball games to do the weekend before the Olympics. So I ended up getting hired as a one-off to do Vanderbilt at Arkansas, February 7th, 1998. Nothing of note really happened in that game. It was a regular SEC game. And I thought I did a good job. And the only reason I was available to do it is because it was All-Star weekend in the NBA, and I didn't have any Nets responsibilities. If I did, I wouldn't have been able to do the game because there was nothing in my contract that allowed me to do outside work at that point. So I do the game. I call my agent the day after. I said, hey, what did they think? He said, I'll call you back. He calls me back. He said, yeah, I talked to them. They said that you did an excellent job with the traffic. Did you help after the game, like get the cars out of the compound? I said, no, dude. And I thought to myself, maybe I need to get another agent if he doesn't understand. I said, I think they meant the traffic of the broadcast, that I handled the broadcast. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So that was it. A few days later, I get a call and they asked me, are you available to do Syracuse Georgetown on February 21st? I was not. The Nets were playing Indiana. I could not get out of my commitment and I had to tell them no. And the person on the phone said, okay, that's unfortunate. No problem. I'll let you know when we have our seminar for the NCAA tournament. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, right. I'm sure that they were just mixed up. So I call my agent back, same person that didn't understand the traffic thing. And I said, hey, you may want to check with them. Am I doing the tournament? And he said, no. I'll check, but no. He calls me back the next day. He's like, apparently you are doing the tournament. And that's how I found out I was doing the NCAA tournament. I ended up going to my bosses at the time. It was a sports channel in New York, and it was under the umbrella of MSG Network that owned Sports Channel. And they allowed me to miss a game, to go do the NCAA tournament. I flew to Sacramento and I worked the NCAA tournament. That week, USA Today was a very popular publication that would get handed out at the front of your room at a hotel. You would wake up, open your door, and there would be a newspaper sitting there. This was very common around hotels in the 90s and the aughts. And I opened my door. There's a USA Today there. I open it up. I read the sports section. There was a column by Rudy Martzke, who was a sports media columnist, and it said, headline, CBS gets the rights to the AFC away from NBC. And because I had done the NCAA tournament and did a good job, I was under consideration now to become one of the voices for the NFL on CBS. And within a couple of months, I was the guy. I was one of the hires. So you just never know what leads to what in this business. This was really right place, right time, taking advantage of the opportunity. Things are different now, no doubt. You can share your reel with someone on an email and send them all the stuff that you do. Back then, that was not realistic. You had to have a videotape. You had to stick it in the mail. You had to hope they open the mail and watch the tape. They probably just stick it on their desk and leave it there and let dust settle on it. These days, it's a whole different approach. But back then, it was a lot of good fortune. And for me, it was truly this perfect storm of opportunities coming together to give me that chance.
It's a great story. As we're all members of the Bruce Beck Sports Broadcasting Camp, which you did before, can you tell us a little about how the creation of the camp really came up?
Yeah, so we did it together 15 years, Bruce and I. 15 years working together in Montclair, New Jersey. It actually started with a guy by the name of David Cerroti, who was teaching a class at Seton Hall University. And he had Bruce come in and speak to his class. And then 2 weeks later, he had me come in and speak to his class. And he said to me, man, that was really informative. And I had Bruce a couple of weeks ago, and the students really loved him too. You know, maybe you guys could do something together and teach kids about broadcasting. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. And he followed up on it. He really did. And that was truly my reaction. I think I said, yeah, okay, whatever, man. And he then put Bruce and I, who we knew each other, but I wouldn't say we were close friends at that point. He put us together and we went 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 partnership and started this camp. And the camp lasted for 15 years, the three of us. Probably around year 12, I knew that my run was over, but I ended up doing it 3 extra years because I had committed and I knew that some people were relying on it for part of their yearly income in some form. And I just thought, 15 sounds like a good number. Bruce ended up going off on his own to Westchester and has been hugely successful. The camp that we started is still happening in Montclair, and it's Tim Capstraw, the radio analyst for the Nets, and Dave Popkin, who eventually came on as someone that helped run it, a broadcaster himself and businessman. And it's just amazing. It's amazing to see, the three of you come through the program of some sort, and the amount of interest and the aptitude and knowledge that all of these young people have. And it's nothing but positive memories, truly. I met so many great people. I'm still in touch with a bunch of campers who are now adults. Think back now, or I probably started doing it 20 years ago. So you do the math. If you have a kid that was 13 or 14 at the time and is now 33, 34 and has kids of their own, it's pretty wild to see how many also went into the business. It wasn't just a bunch of kids that had nothing to do. It was kids that really had an interest in maybe doing this one day. So that was really rewarding.
When you guys started it, did you think it would become as big as it is now? Or was it just like, okay, this will pass over in like 2 years?
Yeah, I just thought it was a fun idea. Maybe we would have 10, 12, 15 kids sign up. And that first year, I think we ended up having about 25. And then the next year we had about 40. And then the next year we had 50. And then the next year we added an advanced class because the kids that had previously done it wanted something a bit more. And 15 kids signed up for that and 60 signed up for the camp. And then the next year, 65. It just kept growing and growing and growing. I had a chance to talk to Bruce recently and I asked him how it all went this year. He said it was an incredible success. And I think he had over 100 kids this year. So you just can't believe the interest level and how much it's grown from 20 years ago to now. And it's not that surprising when you really think about it. There are so many specialized camps out there. Why not something that brings the passion of what many kids feel following sports, talking about sports, and then the potential of maybe trying to do this and following your dreams and getting some background information on what you can be doing to help prepare yourself for a potential career in this industry.
That's a great story. And yeah, we all had a great time.
Our vet class grew a huge amount from
Oh yeah.
this past
Yeah,
summer.
it's a crazy growth. Yeah.
I would even
And
say thanks. These two took me under their wing from the 2 years I've been in the vet class.
Nice.
Yeah.
built some of the best connections I have there for sure. So
Always happy to meet new people in the broadcasting world too. It's such a great thing, like every year.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, is you're around people that have an interest like you do.
Yeah.
And in addition, what we started back then and has turned into an even bigger part of the program is the fact that you get real professionals coming in, sharing their stories, sharing their insight, and then the personal moments that you get to speak with them. Maybe you get an email out of it and you stay in touch. I can't tell you, there have been so many kids that I ended up writing college letters for and help them get into school in some way, maintaining a relationship. That's a big part of this business. It's not just what you do on the air, it's how you and how you interact. That's a lost part of broadcasting in some ways. You could have all the calls, you could have an incredible knowledge base. You still have to connect on a human level. You're trying to connect with an audience. So the words that are coming out of your mouth, the words you're using to describe what you're seeing, if you're doing it on camera, part of the goal is to feel a connection with those that are watching or listening if you're doing radio. And the only way to get to that place of comfort is how you handle yourself in all different situations, not just on the air, but in life in general. So I just found that to be a really important aspect for younger people to see it in action, to see a broadcast professional, how they carry themselves, the command that they have when they speak, and then the humanity of it, that they're just regular people that just happen to have a skill that allows them to do television and radio, and it's very attainable for a young person that has a goal in mind of one day doing this.
Now, do you have any tips for aspiring broadcasters that want to be you when they grow up?
Yeah, my first tip, believe it or not, is not connected to on-air work. It is based more on off-air life. And here are a few things that I would tell anyone that would be interested in pursuing this field. One, you have to be an inquisitive person. Truly, you have to be curious. You have to want to know the answers to questions, not just ask the questions, but actually listen to the answers. So you need to be interested in your subject matter. Two, you need to be interesting in life. How do you get to that place? Well, you need to read. You need to familiarize yourself with things outside of the sports world. Movies, music, television, entertainment, literature, history, whatever it may be. You need to be a well-rounded person. If you're just limiting yourself to sports and only sports, that doesn't allow you to truly tap in to being an excellent communicator. Third, you have to watch how you conduct yourself in everyday life. So if you're going to a restaurant and you're ordering with the waiter, you have to do it in a clear manner. You have to do it so that they can hear you. You have to speak in a way that doesn't have the words, you know, or like, or or right at the end of every sentence. You got to get rid of all that stuff. You have to put it in a different space, not in your everyday life. Be smooth in your everyday life. You go to the dry cleaner to pick up your stuff, speak to the dry cleaner. Don't pufumfer your words. Don't mix up your vocabulary. Get to that place where you are conducting yourself in a manner that can easily transition to on-air work. I'm not saying that you have to be on the air all the time and talk with your friends as if you're doing a radio show, but you have to present yourself in a manner that is consistent with who you are. And that was a big moment for me, realizing that. And I think it's helped me in many ways. I believe I'm a more natural broadcaster because of it. I really try in my day-to-day broadcasting career to be conversational and not to be a robot and not to be a machine. To be consistent, yes, that you know when you turn on a game that I'm doing, that I'm going to do a professional job. I'm going to take you from point A to point B to point C. There's no question about, am I prepared? Am I ready? Am I going to perform? I am. I'm going to be prepared and I'm going to perform. So I think at some point, if you're a young person that wants to do this, I'm not saying that being a fan isn't a part of who you are for your entire life. It is. But at some point, you do have to separate yourself from that mentality. You have to watch games with a different eye and ear. You've got to listen to talk shows in a different way. You've got to take mental notes of what you like, what you don't like, and then apply it to your work. You have to be a student of this. That would be the last thing that I tell anyone that would be interested in doing this. I am still a student of this all these years later. I graduated Syracuse in 1990. It's 34 years ago. I'm still learning every day, every broadcast. That's part of it. And you're never a finished product, and you're always polishing your craft.
We're huge believers in is dumb.
Yeah.
Mike Quick tells us that every single summer
It's
at
true.
the camp. So we're huge believers in that
True.
mantra and mentality. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, one more. Let's do it.
Dylan, wanna?
Yeah, I was just wondering which broadcasters have influenced your style the most, and if any have given you advice that's changed the way that you've done things.
Yeah, great question. I would say the one broadcaster growing up that really stood out for me was Marv Albert. He was doing the Knicks, he was doing the Rangers, he was doing the local news. He would pop up on weekends doing the NFL, doing boxing, hosting the baseball pregame show. I just thought to myself, the versatility, incredibly impressive. The fact that he could use humor during a broadcast, bust the chops of his analyst, and make it work and be sarcastic occasionally. I loved his voice. It was unique. It was different. It didn't sound like everybody else. So that's the one that really popped for me early. Later on, as I got into college, I began to really appreciate Bob Costas and how he approached the job and how erudite he was and incredibly articulate on the air, how he carried himself. He was just so smooth at what he did, no matter what it was. Tremendous interviewer as well, in addition to being maybe the best studio host of all time and an excellent play-by-play announcer. Al Michaels, I had a lot of respect for him, how he would rise to the occasion. His voice was a bit unique. It didn't sound like everyone else. It wasn't the classic broadcast voice, but it cut through. You knew when it was an Al Michaels game. Brent Musburger stood out to me. Again, versatility, what he brought, a command. You just felt he was in charge of whatever broadcast he was doing. And Vern Lundquist, someone that I got to know really well after I got into the business, but from afar, I just appreciated that you could tell how good a guy he was. That came across on the air, and that really stuck with me. That was someone that I'd want to have dinner with, or have a drink with, or hang out and talk sports with. And there was an affability to him, and then there was also a joy to his style. When you hear him do play-by-play, you could feel that he wanted to be there in that booth. So all of those announcers, there have been so many others as well, but those are the ones that really come to mind that help shape me in some way. I know all of them. I wouldn't tell you that I've gotten advice necessarily from all of them, because I had gotten to a place in my career where I was more of a colleague. But I do think back to listening to them and storing away a lot of what I was watching and then using it in some way, doing it in my style, but certainly utilizing some of the traits that they brought and then siphoning it in a way that made it digestible to me so that I could do my job and do it in my manner and not just do an impression of them. When I started doing play-by-play, I was absolutely doing a ripoff of Marv Albert. There's just no doubt about it. I was doing his rhythm. I was using a bunch of his vocabulary. How could you
Can
not?
we hear an impression? I heard that you
Yeah,
have a good impression.
Marv was, it was very simple. Yes, and it counts. It was a gravelly sound. For the Knicks, it was, here is Bernard King. The layup is good. It was just staccato delivery. The way in which he did it sounded like nobody else. And there was just a rhythm to how he called the game. And I basically was doing that because that's what I thought play-by-play was. And eventually you figure out your style, you find your own voice. It's funny with broadcasting because initially you just want to sound like everybody else. You want to sound like someone else that you hear so that people will just think, oh yeah, that's a broadcaster. And then once you start doing it, at least for me, I realized, well, wait, I don't want to sound like everybody else. I want to sound like me. And you start stripping away what you're doing and you get to that place where you're comfortable as you and the essence of you comes through. But that doesn't happen right away. It takes trial and error. It takes a lot of reps. It takes sometimes years and years of doing this and getting to that comfort zone where you're just in the moment and doing play-by-play as muscle memory and not thinking about what you're doing as you're doing it.
It's a great answer. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I want to wish you
my
safe
pleasure, guys.
travels.
Thank
and make
you.
sure you guys check out the Titans-Jets game to see if Ian does the mayonnaise call for Will Levis.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it's applicable. I'm not going to force it.
Of course,
Trust
Only
me.
if it fits in, of course.
Exactly.
So,
Great to talk to you guys.
you too.
We'll do
Thank
it
you
again
so
down
much.
the road.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Have a nice one.
See ya.
Bye.